Hiya, folks. It's Barry Chamish. This next interview is really complicated, and I'm going to try and make it down to earth. Uh, well, of course, you're talking about Janet Phelan, and you may know her. I've got her book right in front of me, Exile. So she is a published author with a lot of. Well, I'm just going to go into it. First of all, are you there?
Yes, Barry.
Oh,
Hi.
good.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Um, Look, what attracted me to your latest article about California corruption. Look, I'm just going to quote you. In response to the California Public Records Act. By the way, folks, we're going to be dealing with all kinds of, well, let's just say you're going to get lost in the bureaucracy, all right? Look, here's what you wrote, then we'll go backwards. In response to the CPRA, Jonathan Cooper first tried to flag that there was only one complaint on file, but you wrote, when I supplied him with the names of two other individuals, this was a month and a half ago. You're right on top of this story, and you're really involved with it. All right, do you understand why I was attracted to this?
Well, I think if I can hazard a guess here, um, the fact that we now have government violating their own transparency laws, puts us quite in a bad situation here. What we're going to discuss a little bit later, I hope, in the show is that not only is are records that are mandated to be public being kept private, but we now have a secret arrest taking place, which in California is also illegal. So
Uh,
governments
a secret
operating,
arrest?
apparently so, yes. I
This is not in your notes. Who got arrested?
Well, there's an individual named Carrie Andrew Crittenden who has been exposing corrupt public officials, specifically judges, but others as well, in the state of California. And he was arrested recently. I contacted the Santa Clara Sheriff's Department trying to find out why. Um, and there are various laws that mandate that if a person's in custody, you can't keep the reasons that you arrested him secret. However, apparently Santa Clara Sheriff's Department is going with the secret arrest. Now, when I supply them, the letters of the law that mandate the disclosure of this information, they referred me to county council, but I can't get a peep out of county council. So we don't know
Why don't you
exactly.
phone his family?
I'm sorry, I don't have any way of contacting his family. I don't know who his family is. I don't know.
If he was arrested, someone would notice.
Well, it's not only noticing, the question is why? What did he do? What are the charges against him? And as you know, very well, I'm sure, Barry. One of the mandates of a free press is to shine the light on what's happening with government. And if people are being arrested and government won't tell us why, then I think this is a matter that should concern everyone.
Well, again, I believe you should find out from someone who knows him where he is. I'm not positive it was a secret arrest. I don't know the case, but I'm going to go in where you're on pretty solid ground. The next point, you're talking now. This is tough stuff for my listeners. What you quote Julia Ansell, she's head of the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, PFB, which no one's ever heard of. Um, In short, you are accusing her of illegally obscuring access to crimes. In short, what is a fiduciary? What is the PFB?
Oh, that's a very good question, and I think people really should know. It's a very small bureau that is housed in the Department of Consumer Affairs in California. And it has been mandated under California law with providing oversight, licensing, and investigations when there are allegations of misconduct of guardians. Guardians, that this word guardian is, I think, a word that needs very careful attention, because a guardian is somebody, sounds like a really nice thing, right? Somebody who takes care or protects someone. But a guardian, in fact, has the power of life and death over his or her ward. Guardians are generally appointed uh, in court proceedings when there are allegations that a person is lacking capacity, like they're getting old, they're getting forgetful, maybe they were injured.
They
So a guard,
clearly have no families. If you're
untrue,
talking about,
untrue, completely untrue.
then
Um,
what are professional conservators? Again, a concept I've never heard of.
It's the same as a guardian. So there are basically two types of we're using the
These
word
are
conservator.
strangers, for some
Strangers.
reason, given guardianship. And what did you say? Essentially, to their bank accounts. It sounds like.
Right. There are two kinds of guardianships, generally speaking. There's guardianships of person, and there's guardianships of estate. In guardianship of person, the guardian makes all the personal decisions for the ward, like where the person's going to live, if they're going to get medical care, if they're going to be allowed to see their family and friends, if they're going to be able to get married, that kind of thing. The guardian of estate basically takes over the dinero, takes over the bank accounts, the investment accounts, and makes the financial decisions. Now,
Dinero? What's
that's
dinero?
the
Sounds
dinero.
like an actor. He was in The Godfather.
Yeah, well, we're looking at Godfathers now in terms of how these guardians are acting.
What is
Sorry,
dinero?
yeah, it means money. I slipped into Spanish for a moment. Excuse me. Yeah, they take over the money. So now this might be all well and good if you have an elderly person who, as suggested, has no family, has no one to look after them. But what we're finding
Don't
is
social workers do this?
they don't take over your funds. Nope.
But they take care of you, supposedly, no?
Well, no. Social workers don't take care of you. They can offer services, etc. But these are legally binding sorts of relationships. Because what happens when a court adjudicates you incapacitated, you basically become a legal zero. You don't, your guardian is appointed. You can't even use your own funds to hire an attorney to fight the guardianship. Basically, you go from, let's say, having however much money in the bank to having no access to it at all and no rights even to go to court to try to clear this thing up.
Well,
Now,
apparently they're not capable of taking this to court. That would require children
untrue,
or
untrue. Guardians, what we're having here, what we're seeing is that guardians are being appointed on allegations alone. Now, we know very well that some elderly
who's
people.
making the allegations, by the way?
Well, let's say the guardian. Let's say there's a guardian living down the street from you, Barry, and they think you've got a whole lot of money stored away in one of those banks, right? So this guardian can go to court and say, well, we think that Barry is losing his marbles. I mean, I see him outside. He's fumbling for his keys. He's talking to himself. We think he needs help. And on the smiting of a gavel, you're going to lose basically most of your civil rights, all access to your funds, and most of the rights that generally people are vested with in the United States. You
It
will lose the right to
actually,
marry. You will lose the right to choose where you live. You'll
well, I
lose
don't
the
think
right to choose who
marriage
you
is the
associate.
issue. I think
You'll
we're
lose
talking
the
about
right.
very old people, very
Not
handicapped.
not not all of them, and not all elderly people. We have a continuum in terms of incapacity. And what is really stunning about these cases is very often no proof of incapacity is required. You've got somebody says so. The gavel comes down. You lose access to your property, access to your rights, and cannot even hire an attorney to say, "Wait a minute, I'm just fine." Uh, so, we have a situation that could be seen as ripe, as open for abuse. And
It's
unfortunately,
not
the kinds
really.
of. Oh,
The
yes.
idea was that it was an over. This is a new bureau, the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau. It's only it's a decade old, let's say.
Mm.
It's an oversight mechanism for the guardians. Supposedly, it's to make sure there is no corruption.
Yes, that's why it came into existence. It came into existence, I believe, in 2008.
Look, you
After
write California breathe a huge sigh of relief. Come on, how many people in California were delighted that there's a new bureau called the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau? This sounds very obscure.
Well, actually, I'll tell you, there was a big Los Angeles Times series in 2005 concerning, it was called Guardians for Profit, when a family matter becomes a business. And this was, front page LA Times going on, over a span of time. And people got pretty upset by this series, what it was these guardians were actually doing with their wards' property, with their wards' money. And based on this series, because the public outcry was so strong, that is when the California legislature swung into action and passed the Omnibus Conservatorship Reform Bill, which mandated the existence of the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau.
All right, let's go backwards. We mentioned Julia Ansell. Remember, she's PFB chief. Anyone who doesn't remember, we are archived for a week at libertyarchives.com. I'm not going to repeat all these. Well, let's say they're all kinds of letters without I've never heard of them. Now, what you're saying is that Julia Ansell re- took, by the way, PFB chief, that's the professional, I refuse to say it anymore. All right, she took complaints against, now your problem is with Melody Scott. I would probably enjoy Fruma Labo more. She sounds like family. But your problem is Melody Scott. And the PFB decided to ignore, this is your writing, ignore the public complaints and get her out of the agency based on dishonesty in her paperwork. All right, explain all this. This is really hard to explain, but do your best.
Melody Scott has a license to be a conservator. The Professional Fiduciaries Bureau did not succeed in divesting her of her license. There was an initial action around 2008, 2009. And what we saw, and it's discussed in the article again is California Goes Dark.
In 1 second, you'll tell people how to read it, but I want to get this straightened out. Melody Scott is a big name in this article, and what you're claiming is that a request was tendered again to Julia Ansell, and she's the PFB Chief, just leave that be. The fact of the matter is, you say 5 complaints are on file concerning Melody Scott. By whom? Who are these? Who are the
Okay. Okay.
complainants?
Okay.
For
Let's
what?
start. Okay. Okay. Let's start here. Um,
Right.
I asked Julia Ansell via a California Public Records Act request for the numbers of complaints against Frumi LeBeau and Melody Scott. And Julia Ansell responded inaccurately and saying that this is not disclosable information. In fact, it is. And it is California Government Code 6254F2 that makes these disclosable. So Julia Ansell doesn't want
No,
to.
that's not good enough. All right. And
Of
now
course
you
it is.
can
I'm
say,
citing the law. I'm citing the law, and people
no, no,
listening
no, let's
can
go
look it
with what
up.
she cited first. Now, this
Sure.
is very bureaucratic, but hear me out. She cited the Public Records Act 6250
Hmm.
that complaints and investigations about guardians are exempt from disclosure. And
Actually,
you,
very. She cited 6254F. You can see it right there in that
sure
cut and
can,
paste. Yeah, that's what she cited. Right. She
and
doesn't
you
want us
corrected
to
her.
know. She doesn't want us to know how many complaints we have against this particular guardian. Go ahead.
Well, then how did you find out there were 5?
Well, this is from the initial go around back in 2008 when the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau limply tried to divest Melody Scott of a guardian license. And at that point, I was in
What
touch
year was
with
that?
2008, 2009
But she
was when the.
received the license in 2010,
That's
and
right.
you are saying that Jonathan Cooper hid a lot of facts to get her license. Do your best.
Right. So I was aware at that time of a number of individuals who had filed complaints with the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau against Melody Scott. As one of the few reporters who, at that point in time, and thank goodness there are more now, but 8 or 9 years ago, there weren't too many reporters who were reporting on the hanky-panky going on in guardianships. So I was something of a lightning rod for this issue. So I was aware of a number of individuals who had filed complaints. In fact, some of them I had copies of their complaints. So now we're facing another go around with the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau and Melody Scott because lo and behold, she has lied again, according to the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, on the paperwork that she needs to submit on an annual basis with that agency in order to maintain her licensing.
So that's a good excuse to get her out.
Well, it didn't work the first time, and it didn't work the first time largely because of the backroom sorts of deals that the Deputy Attorney General, who was allegedly prosecuting Melody Scott's license, that would be Jonathan Cooper, the backroom deals that he was involved in. So, what we had here, it was a very interesting case. And at that point, I was writing for the San Bernardino County Sentinel, and I did a number of articles basically following this saga of Melody Scott's licensing. And what we saw was government looking like it was doing one thing, when in fact they were slipping her license in the back room, and that's pretty much the way it worked out, at a cost to California taxpayers, with all this hoopla, with administrative court hearings and so forth, cost to the taxpayers of California of over $80,000. So once
This
again,
is what the public paid to get Scott a license.
yeah, that's what the public paid for all of this hearings up in Sacramento, and the Department of Justice doing this and Melody doing that. That's what the taxpayers paid.
What
So,
does a normal guardian cost the public to
oh,
get a license?
I'm not sure. I think it's like a couple $100 to file a few $100 to file for your licensing fee. That's basically it. The reason it was so
All right,
expensive,
so
of
what you're
course.
saying, Cooper and, well, Cooper and Melody were very close, and he went through all kinds. He actually ferociously protected her from any culpability for anything and got her a license. That's what you're claiming, right?
That is what I'm claiming in a nutshell. And there were details. For example, at one point, I discovered through someone who was in Melody's circle but was friendly to the efforts to have her unlicensed. I found out that Jonathan Cooper had, this is from the first go around, around 2009, that he had offered her a deal, and the deal, according to my mole, was that she simply pay all the costs up to then with all the prosecutions and back and forth, and she'd get her license. And I found out about this, and I contacted Jonathan Cooper immediately. He denied it. So I went to the public spokesperson for the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, and that would be Russell Heinrich. And Heinrich said, "Oh, yeah, that's right. She's going to get her license. We've discussed it." And so we went to press with that, and immediately the deal was pulled off the table. So that was the first.
She got her license.
No. This is saga that went on in several steps. Immediately, the deal was pulled off the table. But then there was further accommodation a few months down the line so that Melody could get her license.
All right, listeners, I hope you're following this. And believe me, I'm doing my best to guide Miss Phelan so you do understand all this and why it's important. That we'll get to. But what you're saying, you're not talking a backdoor justice, getting her out because she cheated on taxes or something, right? You're saying they're investigating her for her paperwork. I would assume that's reports and taxes.
Actually, if one delves very deeply into the files, the court files involving Melody Scott, you're likely to have your eyeballs drop to the ground. Not only
What's that mean?
Not only are hundreds of thousands of dollars simply disappearing out of Ward's accounts with Melody Scott, not only that, but in many cases she appears to have violated her duty to even try to keep the Ward alive. Now, there are a couple of cases that exemplify this very well. One was a woman who had mental health issues. Her name was Elizabeth Fairbanks. And Elizabeth Fairbanks came down with pneumonia, and Melody decided that this woman would not get treatment for pneumonia and would instead get morphine. Morphine doesn't cure pneumonia. What it does is it retards breathing. It
makes you enjoy it more.
It makes you not care, and it also affects your ability to breathe. So apparently, according to...
So you're saying she was murdered? All right, you know what? We have to take a break. By not giving her proper medication, you're implying that there was a murder taking place here, if I'm not mistaken. Look, 3 minutes, folks. We'll be back. We have commercials. And if, again, you're following this, you're a better person than I. It's a tough one, this one. It really is. We'll see you in 3. This is Barry Chamish. Don't run away.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Have you seen the Left Behind movies? Have you read the Left Behind fictional book series? Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. Because they see the world stage shaping to fulfill what they have been led to believe is sound biblical interpretation, a left behind rapture scenario, this false view of prophecy is reinforced in the mind, not only of its adherents, but also includes those who have been merely exposed to the specific media. Is it possible that false prophecy can be fulfilled? The rapture theories have always been in dispute. Pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib disputes have risen up in exclusively evangelical circles of recent history, so that when true believers don't suddenly disappear, this element will easily go by the wayside when all see a new Jewish temple begin to be built. Will this be part of the great delusion that will come upon the whole earth? It seems that this great prophetic delusion has already overcome practically the entire American evangelical and Christian world. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. To learn more, visit crosstheborder.org. That's C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Hi, folks. Barry Chamish back. Very, very tricky story, this one. And a lot of you may be asking, what's the relevance? But we'll get to that, I guess. Look, my books are all at www.lulu.com. There's a search box right in my last name, Chamish, C-H-A-M-I-S-H. And my website, barrychamish.com. All right, Ms. Phelan, tell people how to get hold of you, get your book, Exile the Works.
Right. Well, I'd like to just sort of sum up first, because I think this is, the devil's always in the details, but I think in broad strokes, I think what people really might be able to grasp from this issue is that there is a whole group of people, and that would be the elderly and disabled, who are being stripped of their constitutional rights, robbed of their money, and in many cases sent to early graves by their guardians. And what we have, the reason, that the relevance of this article, California Goes Dark, is we obviously now have the Department of Justice and this little bureau, the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, extending themselves way beyond the call of duty and breaking the law in order to protect this process, protect these professional guardians from any sort of oversight as to their activities. Now, as an American citizen, as someone who grew up with the idea that we were a free country where people had rights, and part of the rights were property rights, and part of them were other sorts of rights like freedom of association. The idea that someone can simply go to court and say some things about you and you're going to lose all those rights is something I think that we really need to pay attention to.
How do people get your books?
Well, there's two books. The first book was a book of poetry entitled The Hitler Poems. That's available on Amazon. And my recent publication of my book, Exile, was published last year, and it is available on thebookpatch.com. And Exile goes into basically the reasons why I fled the U.S. and
you're not
and
back
what
in
happened.
California?
No, I haven't been in the U.S. in
How have you
8
approached
years. 8
Jonathan
years.
Cooper? This is kind of important. You said on March 25th he wrote you,
Right.
and he
Right.
said that his office doesn't maintain records by complainant name, and he told you to go to the Department of Justice and the Public Records Division. In other
Right.
words, he was sloughing you off. But again, all of this is being done by phone and email?
All of it done by phone and email. Actually, right now I'm on a computer in San Cristobal de las Casas in Chiapas, Mexico, doing this interview. I haven't set foot in the U.S. since, 2008. Yeah.
What attracted you to this story? What interested you so much?
Well, I have been reporting for quite some time now on the hanky-panky going on in guardianships across the country. We now have people who are trying to protect their parents, like Barbara Stone out in Florida, who are being arrested. Barbara has been on house arrest, I believe, for almost a year now for taking her mother, who was under a guardianship, to Denny's. Okay, pending trial on house arrest. We also have.
I admit the food is lousy, but
oh, I know,
what's
really.
the crime here?
I mean, it would have been better to go to to Whole Foods or something. But given whatever you think about Denny's, I don't
all right,
think.
so you can eat all the pancakes you want. What's the crime here?
Custody interference.
Ah.
So.
Okay.
So the guardian has custody, and you better watch out, because if the guardian doesn't want your mom to eat, then you're taking her to lunch could be considered interference. There's other situations now where people are either threatened with arrest, are being arrested. There are a number of attorneys who have lost their license to practice law because they are
over what?
Over guardianships, over attempting to protect wards and to assert their constitutional rights. We have actually a whole cottage industry which is being fiercely
They were disbarred for that?
Suspended, licenses suspended, yes. One of them is Ken Ditkowski, who is out in the Chicago area of Illinois, and he was suspended for 4 years from the practice of law for asking for an honest and comprehensive investigation of the abuses going on in guardianship. It's very important that you're doing this show, Barry, because mainstream media is acting like this is the total hot potato. And really, I mean, we've got an entire group of people who, based on their demographics, and their demographics being that they are old or disabled, who are being stripped of their rights.
Yeah, we caught that. I think we know the issue here. The fact that, if a lawyer faces trial by his peers, all right, you're saying they threw him out for 4 years over guardianship.
There's another case. There's another case also in Illinois, an attorney named Joanne Dennison. And now what Joanne Dennison has been doing is running a blog a blog about what's going on in guardianship court. And according to the state bar people in Illinois, and that would be the Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission, attorneys don't have that First Amendment right. So Joanne has been suspended, I believe, for 3 years from the practice of law for running a blog in which she regularly posts comments about what's happening in guardianship court, as well as
You
documents.
don't happen to have the address handy.
MaryGSykes.com. I'm going to spell that. Mary G, then SYKES.com.
All right, folks, if you didn't get it, we are archived at libertyarchives.com for a week. All right, let's go through your... after Jonathan Cooper told you to go to the Public Records Division and the Department of Justice, you phoned the... Well, you were sloughed off by both. Neither replied to your requests and calls to the DOJ, I'm sorry, were not responded to. All right, why is everyone... By the way, the plot gets better. You found an advocate. We'll get to that. In the meantime, don't they have to send you a letter? I mean, don't they have to respond even if they...
Yes.
All right, what's going on here?
Yes, they do. They have 10 days to reply. And what they can say is, like, go away, you're bothering us, or they can try to lie like Julie Ansell did and cite 6254F.
Why didn't they do that with you?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a very good question because by not replying, essentially they're saying we don't have to pay any attention to this law. This law, this Public Records Act, which allows citizens to know what its government is doing, we're in so much contempt of the law that we're not even going to respond.
Well, the 10-day notice, I mean, even if they send you an invitation to their kid's birthday party, if it's under 10 days, I believe they follow the law. Not replying to you, I don't get it, frankly.
Well, I think it's the arrogance of power, Barry. It is the arrogance of power.
Well,
and I
either
think
they're very worried about you or they're not taking you seriously. One of the two.
Now, let's just make clear what I'm asking for. I'm asking for the number of complaints about Frumi LeBeau and Melody Scott. I'm not asking for juicy details or anything that might go into an investigatory exemption. I just want to know how many they got. But it's like, oh no, we're not going to tell you that.
Well,
now,
you
this
said
is what
5.
I think.
Where did you get the number 5 if they're not talking to you?
That was the first go-around. That was several years ago with the first go-around with her licensure. And at that point in time, I was in contact with other people who had filed complaints against her. This is several years later, and I'd like to know if there's any more. That's all.
Are they conspiring, or do they really like her?
What do you think? You've got somebody who basically withholds life-saving antibiotics from someone who has a treatable infection, and believe me, this is not the only time.
Why would the
with Elizabeth
Department of Justice protect a person like that? What do they get out of it?
Well, to answer that question, Barry, you've got to go pretty far down the rabbit hole and take a good hard look at what America is really all about now. And I think that this whole issue of this sort of targeting does not bode well for the rights of any of us. And the fact that the Department of Justice will so brazenly violate their own transparency laws in order not even to respond to a request from a reporter, it doesn't bode well for any of our constitutional rights. And frankly,
I don't like that answer.
I don't like that answer either. I don't like the reality at all.
You know, the Department of Justice does require scrutiny. It's not something you can just corrupt that easily. You would think not, anyways.
Well, let's talk for a minute about this Ken Ditkowski, who I'd mentioned a bit ago, who has been calling consistently for honest and complete investigations of many cases. Ken has become another sort of a lightning rod for this issue, and people are sending him their documents, and he duly forwards them on to the FBI and to the Department of Justice asking for an investigation. He's been doing this now for a couple of years. No reply whatsoever, except, of course, to kick Ken out of the bar club. So, Ken can't practice law anymore. So what we have, I think, is we have a facade of justice, and there are some issues that are really hot-button issues. They're hot potato issues. And if you hit on one of these issues, you're going to find out how real this Constitution is, how real this Bill of Rights is.
Over guardianship? You think that's the issue that'll make us stare at the Constitution and change our views of your country over guardianship?
Over a whole group of people who will not have any constitutional or civil rights if they dare to trespass over 65? First, they came for the elderly. Remember that? Now, that's a paraphrase. That's not exactly what that famous sort of what was that from Nazi Germany? First, they came for the communists, and I didn't stand up. First, they came for the elderly, and actually, the elderly was one of the first groups that was under assault in Hitler's Germany. It was not, as many people think, the Jews or the Gypsies or the homosexuals.
I wouldn't say it wasn't the Jews. All right.
I said the first group.
They were the first group. They were. No, I'm not going into this. All right, let's go back to the reality we face and not history. Look.
Oh, but history defines the terms under which we operate.
Yeah, let's go back to the issue. Now, you have a kind of victory here. You have now assistant district attorney. There are lots of them, apparently, but one is named Mark Voss, and he wrote you on April 10th, not so long ago, about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, it doesn't matter. He wrote you, the office got many complaints against Melody Scott. Our office's own investigators looked into it and referred the reports to the California Department of Justice. Again, as a result, our prosecutor thinks that Ms. Scott lost her license for a time. I'm not sure if that matters, but what is Voss telling you?
Right. Voss is with the San Bernardino County DA, and it's actually San Bernardino County where Melody Scott's office is. And so what he's telling me is that, we got all kinds of reports and we sent them on to the California DOJ. This is the same DOJ that says, well, we only got one report about Melody Scott. So that was very interesting to find that out. Now,
well, he sounds like an ally, a very reluctant one who's not facing up to alliance, but he sounds like the best you got.
Well, he certainly was, and actually, when I got this, and I asked myself, I wonder how much longer Voss is going to be helpful. So I wrote him and I said, well, could you tell me how many complaints you got? Now, the weekend passed, okay? And so he gets back to me on a Monday or Tuesday and goes, Government Code 6254F, we can't tell you that. So basically, he copped to the fact that all these reports went to the DOJ, which made Jonathan Cooper look like a liar. We know he's a liar, okay? But at that point, he kind of he puckered up, and Voss did, and he didn't want to talk about it anymore. So he was helpful to that extent, and then at that point, I think he decided that he'd gone far enough.
Okay, now let's go to the final point from Mr. Voss that he believes, at least his prosecutor believes, that Melody Scott lost her license for a time. Now, she was granted the license in 2010 and is being investigated now for paperwork infractions. I'm not sure I get this point here.
Right, right. And you're very astute about that, Barry, because Melody Scott did not lose her license because of the complaints that went into the DOJ or the PFP. Melody Scott was in licensing hearings and for a while was not able to practice as a fiduciary, maybe 6 or 7 months or something, because of paperwork infractions. No one is looking at the contents of the criminal complaints that are going in. And the criminal complaints make allegations ranging from theft, embezzlement, to murder. And I do want to say that Melody Scott is not unique in this. We have now a problem that is sweeping the country in terms of these guardianships and the abuse of their power.
Can you believe all from professional fiduciary agents? You get all this. But all right, back we go. By the way, I want to know about someone I might have even someday met. Lawrence Yetzer. Familiar sounding name. What's his problem? He's disabled, but beyond that, what's his issue?
Well, yes, he was disabled. He had cerebral palsy, and he had been living with his mom and his dad. And I think his mom died, and then his dad suddenly had a heart attack and died, and left Lawrence kind of alone in that big house. He was also blind, cerebral palsy, and blind. And he was about 50 years old. And Melody Scott moved in and took control over the family trust and conservatorship over Lawrence Yetzer. And according to the medical records, I was able to contact family back east who was able to get the medical records of Lawrence Yetzer, because the conservatorship only lasted about 4 months. And this man died under some very disturbing circumstances.
Like what?
Well, he developed some sort of kind of a cough or something, and had some kind of breathing problem, and someone took him into the hospital. At that point, under Melody Scott's orders, he was put on paralyzing agents which retarded his ability
she
to breathe.
Doesn't have that right.
Of course she
Come
well,
on,
oh
she's
yes,
not
she does.
a doctor.
Yes. She does. Under law, she has the right to make the medical decisions for the ward. She put him on a
tertiary. I can't believe that.
You're
letting a social worker take
she's
control.
She's not a social worker. She's a guardian.
A version of it. A bureaucrat.
She's not a social worker.
All right, she's a guardian. All right. It doesn't matter. She's no doctor.
She makes the decisions for the ward. So, I got the medical records, and believe me, if Melody thought that I had misreported this because it looks darn close to her murdering him. It looks close to that.
It sounds like something out of the Twilight Zone.
Unfortunately, it's happening all over the U.S. And, we're seeing what's happening in terms of retaliation. Carrie Andrew Crittenden was exposing corrupt probate judges, and all these cases happen in probate court. He's now sitting in jail, and we can't find out why.
Why did Melody Scott kill Larry?
Well, there was a significant amount of money in that estate.
And what's that got to do with her?
Because she has control over the bank accounts. And she basically has dominion over the money. So if Larry should die and money should disappear into Melody's pocket,
that's incredibly. This is beyond suspicious. All right?
The article,
she actually is given the right to take over his bank account if he dies?
basically, as a guardian for a person and estate, she makes the personal decisions and the medical decisions and the financial decisions. The name of the article about Lawrence Yetzer is entitled "The Misfortune of Inheriting." And for anyone who wants to see what these guardians for profit are, how they're taking care of their wards, I really think you need to take a look at this article. And once again, Melody Scott may be one of the most ruthless guardians around, but her business practices are being duplicated all across the country. So anyone who's getting old in America and thinks that it's going to just be cushy in retirement needs to be aware that these kinds of abuses are now at play.
All right, let's just go to the broader issues. Folks, you heard it. One more time, how can people get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me through my website, which is janetphelan.com. And I respond.
Spell your name.
JANET, P as in probate, HELAN, janetphelan.com. And my most recently published book is Exile, which recounts the reasons that I fled the United States, and anyone who thinks that we've got a free press and that reporters are safe in the U.S. might also want to take a look at the book.
All right, we're talking what appears to be a minor bureaucratic scandal, and you've widened it. Why should
Good. That's what I wanted to do. Good. I'm glad that I was successful with that.
Well, explain this. I mean, really, why should we be concerned about a minor? Listen, fiduciaries, I don't even know what a fiduciary does.
It's a fiduciary is a bean counter. I think anyone who is planning on growing old in America will have to face the possibility that they may end up under guardianship. And guardianship, as presently constructed, is a danger to your financial and personal health.
All right, folks. Now I'm going to ask again, why are these agencies, oh gosh, have you got a bunch of them conspiring, I guess, to hush up the scandal of stolen guardians' money? Oh gosh, it's a little more complicated, folks. We're going to have to leave it dangling. You know how to get hold of Janet Phelan. Thank you, Janet. A nice interview. And
Thank
this
you very
is Barry
much,
Chamish, and we'll see you next Tuesday, where Michael McNaughton, I may have him on for 2 hours if he agrees. In the meantime, night all. Night, Janet.
Bye.
If you'd like to get a copy of this program, you may subscribe at FirstAmendmentRadio.com for only $45 a month, and you'll receive an MP3 CD weekly of all of our programs. As a bonus, we'll send you a password for our audio archives online. That's a $15 value. Or you may request any month of any program on one MP3 CD for a minimum donation of only $25, or any single program on tape, MP3 CD, or CD for only $15. You may do all of this online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Just follow the instructions to make a donation or subscribe. You may also adopt an hour of your favorite program. Please don't forget that most of the programs on FirstAmendmentRadio.com are listener-supported. Don't do internet? Then call 559-781-3773 and we'll be honored to help you. Thank you from all of us here at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.